while the rest of the country is enraptured with the whole circus show that we call an election, President Obama is signing another executive order, and this time it has to do with the universal threat of space weather. And so I had to say something. I had to put up something about this, of course, because once again, it's just being thrown in our face in terms of how many ways that, this different cosmological perspective really opens our eyes to what is going on, how belief in the space and the Copernican universe is absolutely and undeniably being weaponized and part of the entire globalist agenda. I mean, this isn't just hypothetical at this point. If you read this, the wording of this executive order, it's just amazing how it just lists through all the different agencies and just connecting them all through this unified effort. Creating this action plan between NASA and the Secretary of Defense and FEMA, and just coming up with a comprehensive strategy for dealing with some threat, which this threat, which of course now they're seeing is just so real. So I think for those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear, this is just yet another obvious piece of the puzzle. It makes me think about some of those last words of von Braun, where he was laying out the timeline in terms of first there would be the Cold War, and then the threat of terrorism and rogue nations, and then before the aliens being the last card, there would be the intergalactic threat, the space threat, whether it was like meteorites or whatever, space weather. Basically the threat of an EMP, which is an interesting one, because even people who are not part of the truth movement or thinking in terms of conspiracy, pretty readily apparent to most people how theoretically an EMP could be created artificially and blamed on natural phenomena. And that, this is the whole back and forth thing. So I think a lot of people have seen this as a potential global threat narrative, and just reinforces the same old agenda of preparing and building the infrastructure and having the game plans and having all these interagency cooperation initiatives that they're all preparing for something that's coming, right? We understand that the purpose of all these phony wars over the last 10, 15 years, ever since 9/11, has effectively been to turn the military into a worldwide police force, and simultaneously turn the domestic police force into being more like the military, the militarization of the police. On both sides, it kind of is being equalized into this Gestapo-like military police force that, there's hardly becoming less and less of a distinction between national defense and domestic defense. Everyone's a potential threat, and this is why they keep fomenting all the riots and the racial tensions and threats of, lone wolf terrorism and shooters, and all go, that's just to build up the force so that when they have something that really is, because you can only create so much chaos on a widespread level using those things. You need something bigger. You got to take down the whole grid. Once you take down the whole grid, that's when you have widespread chaos. That's when you have martial law. So, it's real easy to see. I don't understand how anybody could not, but here it is. It's kind of depressing, actually, but for those of us who are in Christ, we know that our hope is not in this world, is not in the things of this world. It is not in trying to ultimately prevent these things from happening, but from the knowledge of the fact that Christ has already won the battle, that he's already defeated death itself, and that at the end of the day, when all is said and done, God will have the final word. So I don't want to discourage people by looking into these things and sounding fatalistic, because it's not. It's not fatalistic. It's not doom and gloom, but it is sobering and it is serious. We know why these sorts of executive orders go into play. But yeah, without, you don't have space weather without space. Pretty simple. It's just amazing too how everything keeps coming back to electromagnetism. An EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. Now that's the biggest threat, when we're thinking about enclosed cosmology and contemplating an electromagnetic universe. Electromagnetic pulse is suddenly an even bigger, it's an almost bigger threat than nuclear, or maybe just in a different type. But obviously it really would be the ultimate false flag at this point. I think it would trump all previous false flags, because you're blaming the cosmos. You're not even, there's no enemy to go attack. It's just space is trying to kill us. It's just a natural phenomenon. And you just can basically just turn off all the lights and cause chaos and panic, and that really would, shutting down the grid would trigger all the other economic and political crises that they've been preparing in the wings for so many years. So yeah, it is pretty crazy to, when you step back and look at the fact that he's had 8 years in office and he happens to decide to roll out this executive order in the midst of all the distraction that's going on right now. Most people aren't going to even notice, or whatever. Space weather. Obviously, according to a flat Earth model, regardless of what specifics you're looking at, there's really no such thing as solar flares and electromagnetic pulses that are coming from the sun. No blasts of radiation coming from deep space or anything like that. Not even meteors. Most truthers out there understand the reality of things like, HAARP and weather manipulation and all this. And of course, which is just basically using electromagnetic waves concentrated. And that was one thing that I never really understood, actually. In the globe model was actually how something like HAARP, or if you had an antenna array in Alaska or wherever, it's kind of ties into the whole radio wave, the sky wave skipping thing, like how they could possibly aim these concentrated beams at the ionosphere and affect people, basically anywhere in the globe. But if you like, how does that even work? You'd think that their range would be rather limited. Like, are they really skipping the concentrated, HAARP rays, like skipping those like they do a ham radio waves? I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. But in an enclosed cosmology, of course, when you have an enclosed system, maybe they can use HAARP. Maybe it's just the same stuff, the same tech being used to, you concentrate. Basically, you just concentrate heat on clouds or on the ocean, and you create a warm spot. You can create a storm, and even mainstream scientists acknowledge this. This is something that can be replicated in a laboratory. The kinds of HAARP technology, so that people, whether it's really not as fringy as it kind of seems at first, which is weird. So yeah, you take that and then you contemplate it within, whether it's inside the dome or whatever. How hard would it be to? There's a number of ways you could do it. Create an electromagnetic pulse and do this thing that they are, just coincidentally talking about preparing for. So yeah, there it is. Space weather. major threat to modern civilization. Suddenly, gee, I wonder what motive the powers that be might have for, lying about space and the heliocentric model. I don't know if you don't see it by now. I don't know. It's right in your face. Anyways.